These two cars are the same model of Mercedes, and by looking at them, you would have no idea.
That's right, there's a direct lineage between that 72 250C and this 2024 CLE 450.
And in this video, we're gonna go drive both of them and find out which one is better. Case behind the wheel of the 72 250C.
God, this car has aged well. Your interior is beautiful too. It's in such good shape.
So this car I bought a couple years ago now, and believe it or not, as far as I can tell, it's never been restored. I'm like the third owner of it, and I paid a whopping $14,000 because old Mercedes-Benz, they just don't have that much value.
No, and it's kind of, in some ways, at least for good reason, because parts are hard to find. Anyone who's willing to work on these cars is hard to find. And if you want to work on it yourself, a lot of times the information can be hard to find because some of these older Benzes are difficult enough to find parts for and work on that people don't really care to keep them on the road.
Now, like if we're talking about like a 1950s 300 SL Gullwing, yeah, obviously it's gonna be $1 million car.
Yeah, it's 7 figures.
But for like these 70s sedans, 80s sedans, they're just not worth that much for the reasons that Case listed. But if you want a phenomenal driving experience for $14,000, oh my God.
They're such nice cars, and even by today's standard, it's smooth. This one being the older 2.8 liter inline six, not the fastest thing in the world. They said 143 horsepower, 173 pound-feet of torque, and it's a 4-speed auto. So yeah.
Here's the thing. It's not an exciting driving experience, right? If you want to have fun in the early 70s, buy some big 428 powered Mustang or like an Austin Healey or something.
Absolutely.
What is astonishing about this car though, is it drives about as similarly to a new car as anything from the 70s. Because they are heavy, the steering is precise, the brakes are good, and they are so unbelievably set in stone from a driving experience.
There's a level of refinement in this car that, especially for the era, is impeccable. It's impressive. This is where the idea that American cars drive really poorly comes from, because this, compared to a similar age American car, look, they're designed to drive very differently. I'm not saying that American cars don't have their pros and cons, but this car does drive fantastic. And if you want a vehicle to go to dinner in, have a nice date night, relax, go to a car show.
Totally.
It really can't get better.
It's amazing, yeah. And to be honest with you, knock on real wood, it has been perfectly reliable.
Yeah.
Like, it has not left me stranded. It has not let me down once in 8,000 miles of driving this car over 2 years, because they are so well engineered from the factory.
Yeah, and the design has aged really well. From the exterior, this car's got great lines, great proportions. This is a later style wheel that's on it, the bunt wheel.
No, you're right. The wheels on this car are non-OEM.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, 100%. So it's a later model, what's called a bunt wheel.
Yes.
But still looks really good on this car. And then your dash on this car, these are so timeless, especially the gauges, the font that they use, the layout, it's beautiful, and the wood, everything.
They're very like aircraft style gauges. So you've got speedometer on the right with little ticks all the way to 140, and then gear indicators for when the automatic transmission
should shift.
Yeah, and then on the left you've got temperature, fuel, and oil, along with some dummy lights. The interesting thing about these car case compared to a new car is the temperature will rise and fall, right? So a new car temperature gauge is usually set to stay in the middle until the car is in meltdown mode, and then it goes high.
Yeah.
With an old car though, you really see, okay, I'm sitting at a red light and it's 100 degrees outside, the temperature's gonna climb. I'm on the highway going 70, it starts to fall. It never overheats, but it does move around, which is something that new cars don't do.
Yeah, and it's good information. This keeps things very simple. And I like the fact that this interior doesn't rely on just slapping down big screens like a lot of modern cars do to make an appealing interior. This interior actually used design and beautiful colors and beautiful materials. And these seats, this MB Tex, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. These are actually really durable interior fabrics.
Yes, so this is basically, I describe it as like a military grade vinyl.
Yeah.
It's not a leather in this car, and there's two things that will survive the nuclear apocalypse. That's going to be cockroaches and MB techs.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll see these cars with 350,000 miles with rust holes the size of my head in the rocker panel,
but not a hole in the seat.
MB techs will be perfect. Yeah, it's crazy. They're not super comfy. Like, there's not a lot of support, and the cushion's kind of squishy, and like, it's an old car seat. Yeah, thank you, Case. I do have a rattle. Talk about quality.
Well, it does the same thing my old Mercedes does, where the seat belt is just kind of creaking against the chrome on the side of the seat.
Now, here's the thing, Case, is when we think of Mercedes today, we often think of features and tech and you know, the forefront of technology. This car's a 72, and by 72, just about every possible Lincoln and Cadillac would have power seats, power mirrors, lots of gizmos.
Yeah.
These cars were very basic.
They are, yeah, and this too is not the biggest, baddest flagship Mercedes-Benz that you could have bought at the time.
Right.
That would be like a 300 SEL, something along those lines, bigger, more powerful sedan with the 6.3 liter V8. But what they did do really well, even on this car, was make it drive as well as it possibly could, and it does. It drives fantastic.
Yeah, and look, you were paying, I should say, almost exclusively for quality.
Yeah.
So this car wasn't a cheap car. Even by modern standards, the MSRP on this was the modern day equivalent of like $65,000.
Yeah, which is actually the exact 65 is the exact starting price of the brand new car.
Of the new one. Yeah, so everyone's like, new cars are more expensive. If you adjust for inflation, these Mercedes were more expensive than the equivalent Cadillac or Lincoln for less features.
Yeah.
But you were paying for build quality and overall fit and finish and quality in general.
Yeah, which it has in excess.
All right, Case, we're going on the highway. Let's see how the acceleration is. We are actually following.
Oh, did you just kick down into S?
Into slope. Ready? Full throttle.
Whoa.
Look at that. That's nearly 44 miles an hour.
Ooh. This is a hot car.
Dude, this is a hot rod. It's not a fast machine. It's actually very smooth. These inline sixes are super smooth.
Yeah, at speed.
When you're moving, yeah, they don't make hardly any vibration for the age. But like they don't go very fast.
When it's funny, and I think very true of Mercedes in this era, is that they accelerate about the same at highway speed as they do off the line. So your acceleration is almost exactly the same amount no matter what speed you're going. And that's partly because these are their highway cars.
Yeah, right. They are designed to cruise for a long distance in extreme comfort. So right now we're going 60 miles an hour and like our windows are down. So there's a little bit of buffeting, but it's so planted at speed.
Yeah, it really feels good.
Yeah. And the one other weird thing I will say is Mercedes had kind of a funny way of doing gearing back in the day. And the way these cars were geared is that the top of fourth gear was designed to be this vehicle's top speed.
Yeah.
So there's no overdrive per se.
They're all accelerating gears. They're all gears that are intended for you to actually rev up and gain speed in.
But what that means is when you're on the highway at 70 miles an hour, the engine's spinning like 3,500, 4,000.
Yeah, so it's not just idling along.
Because Mercedes was like, yeah, at 5,500 RPM, the car needs to be going 107 or whatever it was, 108.
I think 109.
Wow, 109.
I know. That's actually pretty good for an old inline six car.
It's pretty good. But what that means is that if you do the math and then dial it back, at 75, the car's spinning like $4 grand.
Yeah.
Right? So it's kind of a different way of programming gears back then, which can be a little frustrating. And then the other downside of these inline sixes is they will last till the end of time, but you will be getting 12.5 mpg, and there is nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, it's not designed for economy.
No, I mean, you can drive it gently, you can drive it on the highway, you can drive it in the city, you can have 4 people in here. It does not matter. You are getting 12.5 mpg.
It still does better than my old 73 V8 Benz.
What, you're doing a what, 11?
On a good day, maybe.
So this is a power of a 4-cylinder, but the fuel economy of like a V10.
Yeah,
I'm being unfair. I can maybe hit 15. But Case, overall, I mean, my big takeaway is even though this car is 52 years old, it doesn't feel that way.
No.
You get in a 72 Eldorado, it's going to feel like an ancient car.
Yeah.
You get in a 72 Mercedes, and it feels pretty modern.
It's an impressive car even by today's standards. And for $14,000 that you bought this for, awesome vintage car to own.
Yeah, and like it will not break. Like there is little stuff that will drive you crazy. Like I've had a lot of problems with my idle being right and getting the dual carbs tuned and right. Like you spend a lot of hours getting that stuff sorted, but the big stuff will not fail you, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, shouldn't leave you stranded.
All right, let's go hop in the new one. So Case, how much bigger is the new CLE compared to the old 250?
Well, not including the mirrors on either car. It's 4 inches wider. It's got a 5-inch longer wheelbase. It weighs a little over 1,000 pounds more. And your car has a 14-inch wheel. This car has modest 20s.
Wow, okay. So quite a bit bigger.
Bit of a difference, yeah.
Bit of a difference, yeah. Interestingly enough, Case, so my car is called a W114 platform. What happened was Mercedes for a long time, when they went to the C and the E-Class designation, they built a C-Class coupe and an E-Class coupe. And now they've kind of combined them, right?
Yeah, it seems so. And this chassis code is a C236 from what I was able to gather. Don't feel like people really use chassis codes a whole lot anymore.
Not as much. No, it's not as prevalent. But car's a lot bigger, a lot wider, and a hell of a lot faster.
Yeah, it is. 375 horsepower, 369 pound-feet of torque from still an inline 6 like your car had, but this one's a 3-liter instead of a 2.8, and of course turbocharging. And this car is also all-wheel drive, and it has a 9-speed transmission as opposed to your 4-speed. So this is a very advanced car. And yeah, it is. When that turbo kicks in, it's quick.
And it's got a mild hybrid system, so you've got a 48-volt system to kind of fill in the torque gaps as well. One of the best powertrains for sale today, I think. This 450 level is what they call it, even though it's a 3-liter. Although, Case, so people give Mercedes a lot of heck nowadays, because this is a 450, and people are like, back in my day, a 450 would have been a 4.5 liter. Except my car is a 250, and it's a 2.8.
Yeah, so I don't know if these
70s,
numbers
yeah, didn't mean much.
Oh, my 280 is a 4.5.
So it was fuzzy even back then. But 3-liter, I mean, this engine is so smooth. The torque delivery is everywhere, is the only way I can put it. Low end, high end, it's just everywhere.
It's amazing. There's definitely a little bit of a pause when you first go hammer down. So I'm gonna go full throttle now.
Downshift.
And there we go.
Yeah.
But as soon as it builds, it really does have a lot to give. And this car handles pretty impressive too. You don't get the impression when you're driving it that it is as heavy as it is, other than the fact that it does have a very planted feel to it, but it still feels pretty nimble.
What I'm loving about this car is so many modern, especially German cars, are tuned for the Nürburgring. This car, at least where we're at in our drive mode of comfort, is soft.
Yeah.
It's not floaty, like it, just like the old car, it doesn't kind of wallow over the bumps, but it is so soft and compliant.
Yeah, they've done a really nice mix of comfort, but still performance. So if you want to just cruise, just relax, you can absolutely do that. But I think one of the differences with a newer Mercedes like this, even this not being an AMG, one of the differences is that your car is pretty much purely comfort. This one is comfort, but it blends in a bit more performance to the driving characteristics than an older Mercedes would. And now we're in sport mode. Let's see how the throttle response is now. So pedal down. It's about the same.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that's the downshift. But no, I mean, you bring up a really good point, right? Where my car was never intended to have any sporting potential.
No.
This car will pick up its skirt and boogie when you ask it to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wowzer! Holy moly!
There's never enough room in front of me to really explore this car's acceleration. It is quick, man.
So, dude, This car has a very different interior design, largely dominated by screens. Do you think this interior is going to hold up as well as the 72?
Well, look, a lot of really high-end luxury cars have created a mechanism to hide their screens because it's kind of a known thing that screens, they're still developing, getting better over time. So if you want to look and date a car, the quickest thing to look at is whatever screen it has. So I'd be surprised if in 10, 15 years these screens still look cutting edge. But the rest of the interior, I think there's actually a lot of good to talk about. The wood that's here on the dash is actually textured, so that gives it a really nice feel. There's a lot of really cool ambient lighting in here. I love the design and the shape of the vents. I think looks very premium. To your point, talking about the gauges on your car, it almost looks like something you would find on an aircraft, like a jet engine or something.
No,
and then the speaker grills, these Burmester speaker grills, are also absolutely fantastic to look at. Even the ones up top here have their logo, despite the fact that you'll almost never see them because they're pointing away from them.
Yeah, they did a great job with this interior, and I like all the leather stitching, right? And funny enough, there is some stuff that remains, like the standard seat material in this car is MB Tex, which is of course evolved in 50 years, but it's still very durable, yet feels pretty good. I think, folks like to talk about Mercedes quality going downhill. I think for a long time in the early 2000s, that was very true.
It was a bit of a rough patch.
Pretty true. But this latest crop since like 2018, 2019 onward has been so much better. I mean, you would really struggle to find a piece of trim or a piece of chrome in this car that squeaks at all if you really push on it. It's a really well screwed together cabin.
It is. It's absolutely one of the nicer interiors that I've been in the last couple of years of doing this job, where we get to sit in just about everything. In general, the build quality and the solid feeling of this car is up there with anything.
Whatever. Yeah, no, I agree completely. So, Case, we got the sticker on this car here. Starting price $65,650 for this 450 4MATIC coupe.
Yeah.
As equipped, we're looking at $72,600. How do you think the value stands up to the old car?
It's not an inexpensive car by any means, but to your point earlier, it's actually more comparable than you might think. But there are some interesting things on this car that come standard versus some things that don't. So this car has massaging seats. That's an optional extra. That's not surprising. What is kind of surprising to me, though, this car has standard heated seats, but ventilated seats, that's optional. But something that comes standard is the Mercedes logo being projected underneath the mirror when you unlock the car at night. So that, something that's very, I would say, unnecessary, comes standard, but ventilated seats doesn't. Well, there's a couple strange things with the way that these cars come equipped from the factory.
Yeah, I do agree with you, but if you look at the value on the new one compared to the old one, I mean, for roughly the equivalent of $10,000 more adjusted for inflation, you've got not only power seats, but heated, ventilated, we've got adaptive cruise control, lane centering, safety gear, we've got 1,000 airbags. I mean, there's the amount of equipment you get in modern cars is amazing compared to what it used to be.
Well, all I heard you say was power. Woo! The old car can't do that.
This thing really boogies.
Yeah.
Like, credit where credit's due. So they have a couple different versions, including an upcoming AMG of the CLE. I don't see why you would need to buy that.
No, this car is plenty quick. Genuinely, would have no complaints about the power output on this car.
No, I mean, I think the big takeaway is, look, I wanted to come in this video and be like, everything was better in the old days. Realistically, this car is phenomenal.
Oh, it is.
Yeah. It's missing the pillarless coupe thing, which is a little bit of a bummer.
I would like that.
And it's missing fog lights that are round and stick on the front bumper. But apart from that, Mercedes just knocked that part of the car.
No complaints from me.
So, Case, how much better has the Mercedes coupe gotten in 52 years?
Objectively, it's gotten better in basically every measurable way, but I'll tell you this much. I'd be surprised if that CLE 450 in over 50 years from now has aged as well as your 250C.
Look, what I have to give Mercedes credit for is in an era where everything is like a blobby crossover, Mercedes is still committing to the luxury coupe, which is pretty cool. So regardless of which one you think is cool, you gotta give Mercedes some credit there. Folks, let us know what you think in the comments below. Head over to alltfl.com for the latest and greatest in new car reviews.
Yeah, and we've even got some cool stuff for our free Patreon members if you want to join, so check that out.